So I just wanted to start by saying that revolutionaries don't concentrate their full energy on elections, even less so in a country where the dictatorship of the two parties seems insurmountable for the emergence of other political alternatives. However, I feel like in elections where the great masses participate, in this case, at least 150 million people, and in the class struggle, we socialists can measure where the passions of the people are. So Trump says he represents the working class and the silent majority, right? He lies, as usual. He wants to use the fact that he barely won the Rust Belt in 2016 and now made a very close election, as if the Rust Belt represented the American working class. On the one hand, many Rust Belt workers did not vote at all in 2016, fed up with the Democratic Party that for decades was dedicated to ruling for the capitalist and Wall Street. On the other hand, the American working class is more than that, which was traditionally concentrated in the Rust Belt. The US working class is everywhere, is racially diverse and spread throughout the country, moving all the wheels of the capitalist economy. The working class is in the factories, of course, and in the industry, but also in the warehouses and logistics like Amazon, the services, the hospitals, the schools, in transport, the ports, the supermarkets, in meatpacking centers, in manufacturing, in the prisons where they work without salary, in the fields exploited by agribusiness, in the restaurants. So we are undocumented, we're migrant, we're precarious, we're unemployed, organized and unorganized, we're domestic workers. I feel like a large section of the working class supported the Black Lives Matter movement and held their noses when they voted for Biden. So it's important to say that this year, we not only had an election, we had a pandemic that is still going on. And between February and May, hundreds of worker actions across the country, led by frontline workers, showed the world a truth. Workers are essential, bosses are not. The quarantines were not over when racist police violence claimed the lives of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd. The Black Lives Matter movement moved the country. At its height, 70% of the population supported the movement, and the West Coast dock workers went on a strike, paralyzing 29 ports in solidarity with Black Lives Matter. The Democratic Party managed to defuse the movement for now by using the election trap and the idea of the lesser evil, and brutally repressing the activists who continue to mobilize. Still, these movements are very promising, and there is an alternative for the future. Lenin said, quoting the writer Dmitry Pisarev, that for revolutionaries, it is necessary to dream, but with the condition of believing in our dreams, to examine real life carefully, to confront our observation with our dreams, and to perform our fantasy scrupulously. And in this context, I think what this means is that preparing for what comes after this election requires a lot of imagination and a lot of realism at the same time. Realism to understand that we can no longer spend energy, effort, and activism strengthening the Democratic Party that cannot be reformed. And we should have this conclusion before. Realism to understand that we cannot trust the union bureaucracy that works for the Democratic Party or the NGOs that also work for the Democratic Party. Realism to understand that all our rights, all of them, are won by struggle. As workers in the 30s won the right to organize, as Black folks won civil rights in the 60s, as the queer liberation movement won its rights by struggle, as women won the rights we have by putting a fight, not waiting for the crumbs from our oppressors who 100 years ago shared power. Realism to understand that the capitalists are not going to stop climate change. So we also need imagination, as Lenin said, imagination to dream, to dream that we can win our basic rights, universal healthcare, a living wage, decent housing, and much more if we trust our own forces and our own methods of struggle, like mobilization in the streets, picket lines, and strikes. And to dream above all that we can change everything at the root, that there is a future beyond capitalism, because capitalism is leaving us without a future. And that future for us is socialism. Some comrades believe that we can achieve socialism by reforming capitalism. But the problem is that capitalists, in times of crisis, take everything from us violently. Other comrades think that we can reach socialism by setting up local self-organized communities. But the capitalists and the state brutally attack our attempts at self-organization like they did in Seattle early this year, and we continue to depend on the laws of the market. We believe that to reach socialism, the working class and the oppressed have to make a revolution. Yes, a social revolution made up by millions. Take the capitalists out of power, expropriate them, and put in place a society organized by the working class and the oppressed, where there are no police, no army, but the armed people, no exploitation, and we all decide how to distribute what we need to live in harmony with the planet. And they tell us that we are not realistic, right? But we are hyper-realistic. We know that the capitalists are turning our planet into a dirty prison, as Leon Trotsky said. But we also know that making a revolution requires preparation. Sooner or later, the working class and the oppressed will rise up. We saw it in France, we saw it in Chile, and right here with the Black Lives Matter. But unfortunately, rebellions are not enough. We must blow up the whole current system and build a new one. That's why we think that the best we can do with our lives is organize now for that perspective that requires us to have an organization, a political home of the working class and the oppressed that prepares for revolution, not just in the US, but all over the world. And I want you to try to imagine that. Try to imagine an organization made up of folks that instead of knocking on doors for the Democratic Party, knocks on doors for Black and socialist candidates of a socialist party of its own. Try to imagine an organization that instead of making agreements with the bosses and the union bureaucrats, is part of the efforts of the rank and file workers to get their unions back, to build fighting unions and for the struggle, and kicking out police unions of our organizations. An organization that is part of the Black struggle and fights within itself to unify the Black movement and the working class to fight racism with forcefully measures such as the general strike. An organization that drives the struggle from the grassroots and the workplaces to organize for the self-defense of our communities and their safety against the racist gangs that Trump has reactivated. An organization that does not close its eyes to the monstrous acts that the two parties are doing all over the world against our brothers and sisters in the global South. An organization that, if we have representatives in Congress, will not vote the budgets of the capitalists to finance the police and the army, and that will bring our voice to television, the big media, and call out the war criminals who rule us every time. This is what we prepare for at Le Bois and as part of the Trotskyist fraction in Mexico, Costa Rica, Peru, Venezuela, Bolivia, Brazil, Chile, Argentina, Uruguay, France, Spain, Germany. But we know that this organization needs to be anchored in very strong ideas and have hundreds of supporters. We need a platform, a program that is very clear about what our objectives are. As Leon Trotsky said, in a letter written to the comrades of the Fourth International in the 30s, he said, "Dear friends, we're not a party as other parties. Our ambition is not only to have more members, more papers, more money in the treasury, more deputies. All that is necessary, but only as a means. Our aim is the full material and spiritual liberation of the toilers and exploited through the socialist revolution. Nobody will prepare it and nobody will guide it but ourselves. So basically at Left Voice, we want these ideas to reach thousands, truly socialist ideas. That's why we have a website to forge that stream of ideas into flesh, into material strength in every struggle. We started out very small. Now our readers number in the hundreds of thousands. That means that our website and our social media can go much further, from California to Florida and beyond. I know that many of you folks are seeking for a political home, and we want to build that political home side by side with all of you. We want to invite you to be part of this socialist newspaper so that it reaches very far. And surely you have many questions. Why a website? Why are you Trotskyists? What is a revolutionary party? So our goal is to know you all better, to answer all your questions, and to learn from you by making a common political experience. In the immediate term, from the newspaper, our workplaces, communities, and the streets, we will have to fight the austerity plans of the Biden government, imperialist attacks against our brothers and sisters of the world in Mexico, Palestine, Cuba, Iran, Venezuela, and beyond, systemic racism and the attacks on our rights. But this is only the beginning. It's all about preparing for the revolutions to come. And we feel very inspired because our aim is to take the work of Marx, Engels, Luxemburg, Lenin, Trotsky, Gramsci, C.L.R. James, but also to carry through to the end the struggle begun long ago in this great country by the martyrs of Chicago, the workers of the Seattle Soviet in 1919, the insurgent workers of the Toledo and Minneapolis strikes in the 30s, the Black community fighting against the racist terror of the KKK, police, and even the conquest of civil rights that cost the blood of our martyrs, Sylvia Rivera and Marsha P. Johnson, and the other heroes of Stonewall, and so on. So long life to those who fought. Our best tribute is to destroy the system that causes us so much hardship. Long life to the working class. Thank you very much, Kamans.